can you raise your hands if you can hear and see me both? Okay. Thank you. Right, we have only 12 participants. I'm wondering why it is a low turnout today. Let's start in about 2 minutes. All right, let's start. Okay, so before I go on, let me, because I think this is the last class before our before we go on our break for you all to study for your mock exams. Right. So your exams, make sure that I'll be giving you 3 questions. The first one is compulsory, and that is based on one topic. The other 2 questions you have, you can choose between question number 2 and question number 3. There is an option for you to choose. It will be on, of course, your guidelines. It will be there. But I'm just trying to, and I'll inform you today as well, so there's no confusion. So you choose one of them. So one of them will be a problem question, and one will be an essay. So from that, you choose one. So the first one is compulsory. This between 2 and 3, you get to choose one. Okay. Right. So that is it about the mock exams. Good luck with your studies and hope you do a good job. Now, let me do a very, very, very small recap in terms of free movement of goods, right? This was the topic we started off last week, and let me finish it this week, right? So free movement of goods ideally deals with the sale of a product from one member state to another member state. And it also talks about goods that come from third countries, sort of what happens, right, in terms of policies and taxes, etc. So once the goods are within the EU, that means, let's say goods do come from other countries like India, Russia, whatever. Once they're in the EU, it has to be like there has to be free circulation. That means goods have to move freely. In order to have this, there are certain barriers that needs to be removed. Okay, there are monetary barriers and non-monetary barriers. Barriers with regard to money and barriers that are that don't amount to money. Okay, so barriers with regard to money come in 2 pieces of legislation in terms of free movement of goods. That is Article 30 and Article 110. Article 30 prohibits customs duties, okay, and you can't have customs duties within these member states. So if goods are moved from one country to another, that you cannot have customs duties, right? 110 is under discriminatory taxation. Now, what discriminatory taxation is basically where countries are allowed certain types of taxes. Okay, so certain types of taxes that are allowed by the EU. Member states can add it on or have those taxes, but it cannot be made in a discriminatory manner. That means you cannot, make it another form of tax for a product that is coming from another country. That is called discriminatory taxation. we do you know where we ended last week? One of you, Shakir, do you remember where we stopped? I remember you being in my class. Alishka, Pumi, do you remember where I stopped? Pumi, you don't remember, is it?
I'm trying to check my notes, ma'am.
Yeah. Did I complete Article 30? I don't think.
No, ma'am, we didn't.
We did. Okay. Right. Thanks. Okay. So yeah, so basically monetary barriers and non-monetary barriers. Monetary barriers are barriers which relate to money, and non-monetary barriers are barriers which don't relate to money. So non-monetary barriers come in Article 34 to 36, which deal with anything that is not in relation to money. All this is the reasons for all these laws to come by is to achieve a single market, which we discussed last week. Oh, right. Then we spoke about negative integration and positive integration. Can one of you all tell me the difference between negative integration and positive integration? So the EU has to make certain rules, abolishing certain rules, tells member states to, we don't, your rules actually affect free movement of goods, etc., etc. So that comes in two forms. There's something called negative integration and positive integration. Pumi, what is negative integration and positive integration?
Negative integration would basically be removing the barriers which would facilitate free movement of goods, and positive integration is basically standardizing the process throughout the European Union so that free movement of goods may be.
Okay. So negative integration is basically removing certain policies and laws that cause a hindrance to trade, such as removing customs duty, removing quotas, and other forms of anything that removes any barrier to trade is called negative integration. Positive integration is basically adding, making new policies and laws which enables free circulation of goods. For example, harmonizing national rules in terms of standardization, things like that. Okay, so standardization of, like, I remember I spoke about the phone plug points, all of that will fall under positive integration. Okay, so for example, if you take this light bulb, okay, let's say the light bulb is Greece is making it and selling it to Spain. Now, if you look at this light bulb, yeah, it's basically a light bulb that sort of should be able to, this looks like a standard light bulb. But the problem is, what if it's not about this light bulb being manufactured in one country and able to be, and for it to be able to be sold in another country? The fact is that, what will this light bulb fit another country's market, or will it fit another like, let's say, Spain or Italy? Will this light bulb fit their household or wherever it is supposed to be sold? If it doesn't, then what happens is, technically there'll be a hindrance to free movement of goods, because this light bulb, though it's manufactured in Greece, won't be able to be sold in other countries due to their technical standards being different. Okay, so the idea is to harmonize all the technical standards, so all of the goods that are produced within these countries could move freely without any hindrance. Okay, so has it been fully achieved? No, but that is the aim. Okay, everybody understands that? Yeah. Okay. So there are two types of barriers to trade, like I explained before. There's monetary barriers. The main legislation is Article 30 and under Article 110, and non-monetary barriers 34 to 36. Right. So monetary or tariff barriers are basically regulations on customs duties, which is in between Article 20 and 30 TFEU, where you try to abolish, where the law says that customs duties are abolished, right? And then we have some 110. So first we will do Article 30 and then move on to Article 110. Every other aspects that don't fall under this, Article 28 to 30 or 110, fall under Article 34 to 36, which are called all other barriers to trade that do not involve a payment of charges. Right? Anything that does not involve charges will fall under Article 34 to 36. And there are two types of things that we're going to learn under Article 34, 35, and then exceptions are in 36, is something called quantitative restrictions and measures equivalent to quantitative restrictions. Okay, I have explained how that works as well last time, right? And Article 37, which is in terms of state monopolies, right? Right. Now, Article 30. Let me go over this again. So what is a customs union? Okay, so customs union is described and explained in Article 28 TFEU. Okay, it says that member states cannot apply their own customs duties. Okay, so it has to basically work well in line with EU rules. Okay, and what is a customs union? What covers under customs union? It shall cover all trades in goods, which shall involve the prohibition of customs duties on imports, exports, and charges having equivalent effect between member states. So you cannot have, you're prohibited from having customs duties on imports, exports, and anything that any charge having equivalent effect. Okay. And within the EU, they have adopted a common customs tariff where goods come from third countries. So let's say Russia, India, China, there is a common customs tariff that will be sort of all member states have to comply with that. Okay, so once the goods are in the EU under Article 28.2, the goods should be in free circulation, okay, without any barriers. Right. So there is no definition given in the EU treaty on the term goods. Now we're talking about free movement of goods, but goods have not been defined under any treaty article. Okay. Therefore, in Commissions versus Italy, Art Treasures 1968, it defined what goods are. Now, what are goods? Okay, so we're first dealing with goods. So we are first trying to identify and define what goods are. Goods are any product which can be valued in money and form a basis of a commercial transaction, something that is valued in money and you can transact based on something called commercial transaction. So there's loss, profit, etc. Okay, so that is the definition of goods. And we started speaking about a purely internal situation, right? Now I explained purely internal situation, so let me do it in brief. A purely internal situation is something that does not basically affect EU rules. Okay, so EU rules have a set standard. Okay, it has a set standard, and when the set standard of EU rules have been made, when EU law makes rules, only if it affects me can I go to court and fight it. Only if it affects my EU rights, if I am a EU citizen. But if it doesn't affect my EU rights and EU hasn't covered the right I'm speaking about, then I cannot use EU rules because it's called a purely internal situation, which means that it is Spain's pure domestic laws or Italy's pure domestic laws, which does not involve a conflict with EU rules. So if that goes into place, Italy can have their own rules and they can basically sort of adjudicate based on their own rules, okay, and interpret based on their own rules. But if that rule goes against the EU right is when I can fight based on that right that is spoken by EU. Other than that, every other thing which does not sort of affect EU rights is called a purely internal situations. Okay. Purely internal situations are a set of facts entirely confined with the single member state. So it is on that single member state, nobody else can come and supersede that, because it does not like affect EU laws, right? Situations are not situations that are not concerned with any EU law. Okay, so there are situations that are not concerned with any EU law. It was always presumed that free movement of goods provisions were only applicable where there was an interstate trade. So it was initially under free movement of goods, they thought that every free movement of goods provision, every law on free movement of goods will only be, we can only be invoked if there is some interstate, when there's trade between two member states, then only you can invoke free movement of goods. Other than that, you can't invoke free movement of goods. According to the purely internal rule introduced by the European Court of Justice in 1979, purely internal situations lie outside the internal market fundamental freedoms and of other EU provisions having a cross-border scope, right? Purely internal situations were also recognized in some situations under Jersey Produce Marketing Organizations. So you can read that under Jersey Produce Marketing Organizations of how purely internal situations work. Okay, so when you get the slides, I think are already uploaded, you can see it on that. Right. Now, sorry, my internet connection is apparently bad. So if I'm breaking, could you let me know, please? Right. Monetary or tariff barriers, Article 30. Now, what happens in Article 30? Okay. Article 30 prohibits customs duties on imports, exports, and all other charges having equivalent effect. Now, as I explained last time, because if something has been prohibited, okay, so for example, now if I give more simple example I can give you is murder is prohibited, okay, so you can't kill a person, so you are not going to go and kill a person in public. If somebody wants to kill a person, they will do obviously through private means, okay, so they will have their own sort of agenda, and then they will have a plan and all of that, and they would do it in private means, never in, hardly in public, right? Because of course you would get caught. Okay, so what happens here is states know that customs duties are prohibited. So instead of applying it as customs duties, they will go in other means. So for example, I'll just give you a brief example. Let's say this Italian person who's selling his apples to Spain. The Spanish rule is that, okay, so you can sell any amount of apples you want, no problem, you can sell apples, but for per crate, you have to pay a 20 euro charity for, this is for our charity, okay? So they're not calling it customs duty. So when you cross a border, all these people who sell apples have to pay an amount for charity, okay? Though it is not called a customs duty, it is a charge having equivalent effect of a customs duty. Why? While crossing the border, selling the apples, you are charging something called a charity fund. Okay, and that amounts to a charge having equivalent effect to a customs duty. Do you understand that?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. The prohibition also applies to customs duties of fiscal nature when it comes to government or public money. And this article has direct effect. Okay. This was the first article relating to free movement of goods to be found directly effective. In Vangen and Luce, the court held that Article 30 could be relied by any individuals before the national court. So we did Vangen and Luce in your previous topic. Right. Now, what is charges having equivalent effect? The Court of Justice, now that is again not defined under a statute, under an article, or it is not in a directive or whatever, it came out in a case, right? The sort of explanation or definition of what charges having equivalent effect means. The Court of Justice gave a wide meaning for charges having equivalent effect, okay? Commission versus Italy, Statistical Levy, 1969. Extra fees and charges that are likely to put imported goods at a disadvantage compared to domestic goods is also a charge having equivalent effect, that is CEE. So any extra fees and any charge that are likely to put imported goods at any disadvantage compared to domestic goods. Now this Apple story, These apples are only for imports, right? So when a good comes in place, you are charging a charitable whatever fee to these apples that amounts to that amounts to this product coming from another country. They're at a disadvantage compared to the apples that are already grown in their own country. Okay, so the court ruled what or defined what a charge having equivalent effect means. Any pecuniary charge, however small, whatever designation and mode of application, which is imposed unilaterally on domestic or foreign goods by reason of the fact they cross a frontier. Okay, so the fact that it crosses a frontier, you make you have a charge. It amounts to a charge having equivalent effect, or it constitutes a charge having equivalent effect to a customs duty. Okay, so like I told you, even if the money is used for a social aim, the prohibition applies. Okay, Commission versus Italy. It involved an Italian levy on imports and exports across its borders. The levy was very small sum and it was used to pay for the gathering and publication of statistics on trade patterns. Okay, so the purpose was to pay for the publication of certain statistics and trade patterns. The ECJ emphasized that it is the effect, not the purpose of the levy that matters, since extra fees and charges are likely to put imported goods at a disadvantage compared with the domestically produced goods. The effect was equivalent to customs duty. So the thing that you need to take in Commission versus Italy statistical levy case is that it is not the reason, it is not the purpose. The purpose could be good, bad, it doesn't matter. The fact is that you have to look at if the charges are likely to put the imported goods at a disadvantage compared to domestically produced goods. If so, it amounts to CEE. Okay, key part of this test. Okay, when you answer questions, you need to check this. Okay, how do you identify whether this amounts to customs duty or whether this is in relation to Article 30? There are two key things that you need to look at. Okay, first, you have to identify, due to the goods crossing a frontier, was a sum payable. So in your question, you have to see there was goods being transported to another country. Was a charge payable? Was a sum payable? If the answer to that question is yes, then it is an Article 30 breach. Okay. If the second part you need to look at is if it can be shown that the sum payable is for some other reason, okay, such as payment for a specific service carried out by a trader, for the trader, for example, storage facility, then it will not fall within the court's definition and it won't be an illegal charge. Now, for example, let's say Pumi travels with a box of meat from Germany to Italy. So while she is traveling there in her big truck, her big sort of truck at the border, close to the border, so it's supposed to be cool. The truck breaks down and she has made lots of packs of meat where she needs to, and now the truck is broken, truck at the border, she will go and say, okay, my truck has been broken. I need to go and store my whatever meet somewhere, and for about a day she gets a storage facility and she has to pay a payment there because her meat has been stored there, right? Now the charge or the payment she makes there does not amount to a charge having equivalent effect, because you can show, or rather the state can show, well, the reason we made her pay, or rather the company can tell her, okay, the reason that we made her pay was not because it was a customs duty, rather it was for some other reason. It was for a reason of storing her meat products because her vehicle had broken down. Understood?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, right. Okay, now remember, for Article 30, there are no exceptions. Okay, so it's sort of like an absolute right. Okay, but there have been court made exceptions, because there have been certain ways that, okay, you have to have some form of exceptions, but you'd understand that it's not like a straight exception, because Article 30 is absolute, because they're very strict with Article 30 in terms of customs duties, right? The ECJ has held that the prohibition on charges having equivalent effect also applies to goods imported